Hello, I'm Christian, and welcome to the Jamoir Leadership Podcast, a show where we talk about effective collaboration, influence, and leadership in an increasingly complex world. My interview partner is Dr. Dirk Schlimm. Dirk is an international leadership expert and the author of Influencing Powerful People. The purpose of this podcast is to share ideas and stimulate discussion, and it does not constitute professional advice of any kind. If such advice is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. The speakers, host, and Jamoir International Incorporated are not to be held responsible for any use, misuse, or reuse of the content. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Jamoir Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by our leadership expert, Dr. Dirk Schlimm. This is part 2 of our 2-part interview series with Alejandra Martinez Boluda. So we encourage you, if you haven't caught part 1, please go listen to that. Alejandra gives a lot of great information about her background and, of course, some discussion about the realities of modern leadership in this complex world. But today we're diving into part 2 on this episode. So of course, sit back, relax for a great conversation. We're talking about culture, cultural transformation, culture versus strategy, questions and advice for aspiring leaders, and so much more. Part 2, let's get started right now. For the next question, which speaking about it before, I was very excited to ask because Dirk and our audience, as you know, we often talk about cultural transformation in workplaces, workspaces, and of course, organizations. And now we have an expert to really dig into this one. So let me ask the question, Alejandra, what strategies have you found most effective in driving cultural change? And how can leaders ensure this transformation aligns with their broader business goals? Why don't we dive into that now?
I think that this is one of the big challenges that we have. You know, I don't know if you are familiar with, we all want change, but nobody wants to change. And there's nobody to lead the change. But it's true that I think that when we are talking about changing the culture of an organization, you see organizations, in my opinion, are like living systems that they evolve organically. So the only way you can change is bringing the people in the change. It's not about imposing, but co-creating. I would say that at BICG, we use several things. First of all, the degree of involvement of different, I would say, different profiles. No, you need to have obviously the top management involved. If you don't have this, it will be difficult at the end of the day to change. No, you really have to have the right sponsor when you are doing a change, especially in the way people work, in the behaviors, and in the culture. You need to bring on board the middle management. As we were mentioning, Dirk, it's a key group of people that you need to have them on board. And after this, you need to create a structure of, I would say, influencers in the company that will be actively involved in the change that you want to lead. People are very resistant to change because change is extremely emotional. So at the end, what we do is we put in place different methodologies, and according to the challenges of the groups, we try to use transitions. We try to facilitate workshops. We try to create one-to-one dialogue as well, because sometimes, especially with middle management, you need to have this one-to-one dialogue because sometimes it works better, no? It's like a fitness program, no? I often say, as we see it at BICG, is you need to have clear goals that you want to achieve, and these goals that should be achievable, no? You need to have short-term wins. You cannot swallow the change on a go. You need to really cut the change in small pieces, and this is extremely important. You need to practice within your teams, And you need to create this environment that I insist a lot of safety. And this is extremely important. You need to create this psychological safety within these teams, within these change makers at the organization. These are some of the examples that I use and that it works. And another thing, last thing, is that change takes time.
Yeah, that's very good, Alejandra, and I appreciate just the two parts there. Thinking about it conceptually, imposing versus co-creating is such a clear way to think about an overarching agenda there when it comes to change. But then the practical steps, I of course appreciate the analogy to a fitness program and thinking about the small steps and goals, and that's very practical and very tangible. And I think that's something people can latch onto. Sorry, I took so many notes for this one that now I have so many things that people can implement when it comes to that in terms of the one-on-one dialogue. I think that's key. And of course, now this new theme, I think, Dirk, we'll have to talk more about middle management and the role and how to empower people and just recognizing the key place that is for change to happen. But of course, teams to be integrated. And there's so much I could say, Dirk, but Dirk, you're the leadership expert. I'm the podcast host. So Dirk, do you have anything to add here?
I always have two cents to add. I'm going to add them right now. And so we talk about this this tension, and one of the ones for me in change management is, yes, you have this, this big idea, and you want to give people the big picture and why we're doing it. And as a change leader, if there is somebody, we just found out from Alejandra, not a lot of change leaders, but say you're the change leader, you're very excited about your change program. And I remember introducing something, and I was so excited, explained the big picture, and we're doing this. And then I said, any questions? And the worst thing that can happen when you make a presentation, introduce something, nobody has questions. This is just dead silence. Please, somebody come up with something. And somebody said, well, the thing that was approved, is it still approved? So I gave you the big change program here, and you're coming with a little approval, but that's a big reminder. Hey guys, what's in it for me? Right? And so we just have to remember, you're so excited about your big change thing, and no, your audience is politely listening, but they're really thinking is, do I still have a job? Do I still get this? Is this thing now approved? And so it's sometimes the questions that people have may strike us as a change leaders as very uninspiring, and we were, looking more for the opportunity to explain the big thing one more time, right? So Henry Kissinger famously said, "Do you have any questions for my answers?" Right? And this is not what we have here. I actually have questions for my questions, and maybe it's not even the question you want to hear because it kind of undermines the big idea. But this is where we have to keep it super real, right? And nobody in an organization, it's almost like, oh yeah, no, I love change. If you don't say I love change, then you're already suspect of not being with the program. So people are savvy, they know that, but we have to keep it super real, and we have to address those maybe things that strike us as not quite as important because they're important to people, right? And this is the thing that's on their mind. And so the what's in it for me, or what does it mean for me, is a big part of it. So this would be my addition here, Christian.
I agree. 100%. I agree.
Very, very good. So why don't I keep it going here with a follow-up question to that? So something Dirk mentioned to me is that there's a popular saying about culture eats strategy for breakfast. And we've been going through a lot of different things where we have two opposing forces or traditionally opposing forces, and we're trying to see how they fit together. So on one side, we have culture, the other side, we have strategy. So Alejandra, do you agree with the sentiment of that popular saying? Or maybe I'll just phrase it as a positive question. How do you see the relationship between culture and strategy, perhaps playing out in successful organizations or organizations that hope to be successful?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think that culture and strategy cannot be opposing forces, no? They are symbiotic because one cannot live with the other. Strategy, I would say, that defines where an organization goes, no, the direction, but culture determines whether it will get there. So obviously, if you tell me what is more important, maybe I say it's easier to get the direction. Obviously, to get the right direction, maybe is not that easy. But what is more difficult is to have the right culture. I think that the strong culture will amplify strategic execution by fostering commitment, innovation, and agility. And organizations that have both will be extremely successful. But I do think that in the long run, a culture wins. In the long run, okay? So culture, in a way, it defines how things get done in an organization, no? It's the informal part. It's not the vision or the mission, but it's the informal part, the reality at the end of the day. So maybe a great strategy can fail if the company culture resists change or lacks accountability, or it's not aligned with the execution. So, but both are important. We have examples, I think, that with both directions, no? We have, for example, if I think about Apple and the success story of Apple, I would not say that the culture was behind this successful story when Steve Jobs, no? But it was extremely successful because the direction was really the right one. So let's have both.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I like the way you phrased that as a symbiotic relationship where
it's a symbiotic. That's it.
No, that's great. And you can have one or the other, but let's have both. And that's something I think people can latch onto there. Dirk, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I have some thoughts, and so of course the strategist would say, rowing hard doesn't matter if you're rowing in the wrong direction. And so this is a strategy view, but if you're rowing in the right direction and your boat is not aligned and everybody is doing something different about that doesn't work either. So Alejandra, obviously it is both, and it's always easy to say that, but it's very hard to do in practice. And so Alejandra used the word symbiotic relationship. I learned the word and I love it. I love big words, you know this by now, and I worked hard to say them, and I'm now glad I get to say them because I worked too hard to say them. Is multiplicative performance system, right? In a multiplicative performance system, I have a multiplier between the two, so it's strategy times culture. And if I have 10 on strategy and 0 on culture, I get 0. If I have 9 on strategy and 1 on culture, I get 9, and that's not bad. But if I do 5 times 5, I have optimized it, right? So I can over strategize, and if that goes at the expense of culture, I lose. Or I can over culture if that goes. So it's finding this multiplier effect, and the multiplicative performance system is. I think there is a lot. There is a lot to it, and so there are different ways of saying this. And I think Alejandra used the symbiotic relationship, and so we need to be aware of it. Really that we need both. And then what does that mean practically? For me, easy to say, okay, I only have, say, I work an 8-hour day, or you say you work a 10-hour day as a senior manager, or even more, but I have a finite amount of days. So let's take a 10-hour day because the math is so easy. If I spent 9 hours on strategy and 1 hour on culture, you're missing the boat. So you really have to get that workflow software that Alejandra has, and you planify your day and where you work and say, you know what, I'm going to put 5 hours into this, and then 5 hours into that conceptually, and I'm going to force myself to make that real and ask myself at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, or at the end of the quarter, how much time have I spent on one or the other? And if I think both are important, does my calendar really reflect that? Right? And hey, if I bring people along, that counts as work. Sometimes we think creating the PowerPoint slides, that's where the work is, but no, the work is spending the time with people. So that would be how I think.
Oh, well, wonderful. Before we move on here, Dirk, I told our audience that I would let you have a couple of questions, and the last question that we planned is always my favorite one. So Dirk, that means I have to give you this next one so I can then get the last one here. So Dirk, please go ahead.
So Christian, mark of a good podcast host is to keep all of your guests happy. And I know you're very much focused on Alejandra, but I do appreciate that you keep me happy also.
Yes.
And let me ask my questions here today. So today again is a really interesting discussion about the workplace. We now know about liquid real estate. We know about flexibility and really adjusting the space to what you're going to do, lack of rigidity, facilitation, all of those things, Alejandra, you have been talking about. So let's look into the future. So the future of work, workplaces always continue. We now love change, right? We're ready to want change. We're ready to lead change. We're ready to be the change. Let's assume that for a second. But then what trends do you see? What do you think is the innovation that's coming, that's defining the future of work? And of course, BICG, where you're the managing director. What are you doing to position yourself? We know you have the collaboration with the Fraunhofer Institute in Stuttgart, and I know it's super famous in Germany. Maybe people don't know it quite as well here. I wonder how flexible those Germans are that you work with, right? How fluid and how liquid they are. We don't know. Maybe we can find somebody to talk about this. But today you're here on the show. And so we're asking you, how do you see the future of work? What innovation do you see coming down the pike? And what are you how do you look into the future?
Yeah, well, I think that we have ahead of us a very challenging transformation of work, mainly shaped by artificial intelligence that will radically change the way we work, linked to automation. And I think that this will imply a shift in more human-centered workplaces, because we need to have this balance. Today, maybe the artificial intelligence will allow us to work in a better way and in a more efficient way. The technical part of our work, it can be extremely, I would say, transformed. So the human part remains so important, no? And I would say that the concepts like flexibility will still be one of the things that we need to stick, because the world is carry on changing radically in a pace of time so quickly, no? But personalization is not coffee for everyone, no? We need to find more personal solutions. Continuous learning will be radically a key aspect. And also, let me share with you three things that we foresee at BICG in different fields. The first one is we are seeing the revolution in the industrial environment with the new digital collar. It's a game changer where industrial environments meet advanced technology and a profound cultural revolution, merging the obsolete white and blue colors. They're going to merge into this digital color, and this is going to transform radically the industrial environments. On the other hand, another thing that we've been working a lot is this customer experience plus employee experience, which is at the end the company experience you want to create. These two worlds are completely connected. You need to transform in a integrated way, in a coherent way, these two worlds, because if not, the vision that you provide is not consistent, no? And finally, also the revolution on the, I would say, on the space, the liquid that I've already talked. And I would say that this is a little bit what I see in the future. I don't know if you can complement Dirk. What is your impression about this future? I'm really interested. I'm asking the question now.
Yeah, you've
caught on, Heather. You've caught on how it works. You're turning the question around, and I must say I agree with everything you say, and I really want to amplify it. That in the age of the machine, people can only compete with the machine by being more people. And so people skills are actually not less important in the age of the machine, because they're more important, because I differentiate from the computer program by being able to relate, by being able to feel, to build connections with people. And so I think soft skills, as they're sometimes called, there's a renaissance in my view of soft skills, because the machine is advancing so quickly. So that would be one point I'd make. Couldn't agree more with your point on continuous learning. So Jennifer, who is Christian's my boss, the president of Genoir International, we took a course in prompt engineering. And so, hey, there are these new tools, and it's very tempting to just type something into ChatGPT, but you can be so much more creative with the tool if you know how to use it. But this is something you gotta learn. So I recommend a course in prompt engineering. And then again, I'm basing this on my experience, for example, with a strategy workshop. So I assume, not only do I assume, I encourage people to use ChatGPT or any other large language model, because now the machine can do something. Okay, give me a strategic analysis of, you feed it in, give me a strategic analysis, and you get an amazing output, which normally would have been a fantastic output of a work, but now it's a starting point. Not say, oh, ChatGPT did it for us. Our workshop ends in 10 minutes. No. You now starting at a different starting point, and I'm expecting more from you because a lot of legwork has been done, and I want you to use the tool that way. Now, for sometimes, I love terms. So the term here would be cognitive offloading, where I always let the machine do things, and now I cannot think anymore. So you want to use it in the right way, especially in training and development. And maybe Christian, you can comment on that, because you have experience as a professor with students who use ChatGPT. So you'll give you that comment, and then the last question after. So the tools have to be used right. Technology can make a huge difference, but again, it's a multiplicative performance system with the human factor, and getting those things right. But if it is used right, you can really see the difference in the quality of output and taking things to a new level. So those are my thoughts here.
Yeah. No, and thank you, Dirk, for jumping in. Alejandra, thank you for bringing Dirk into the conversation there. I have to say, before I ask my last question here, this was perhaps the hardest podcast for me to host, not because of the content per se, but because of the quality of the content and the quantity of advice I got. And I used the last page on my notebook, and I'm stuck with, Alejandra could see, I've been taking notes on my little Post-it notes. That was the only thing in hand. I wish I had a better technological setup here and have my screens going to take better notes, because there's so much here, and I'm so limited by these tiny sticky notes at this point. But no, thank you for that final conversation. And Dirk, as you mentioned, yes, on the academic side of things, I really see firsthand how technology, it could be a great, amazing tool, but also you have to be careful. And I like that note you had just about the response to the technology is for humans to be more humans, people to be more people. And that's where I think, especially dealing with teams and different academic structures and administration, I could see how tools can make things so streamlined. It can bring people together. It can allow us to communicate better. And really, especially when it comes to culture, I'm so amazed at workspaces and the academic side, the things you could do to bring people together, whether in person or online or at the same time, which is great. But the cognitive offloading, a term I recently learned, great for me when I'm grading papers and putting together lesson plans, not great when I'm trying to teach an essay writing course, and then I get students who hand in an AI written essay. So definitely pros and cons there, but I think overall it is something we will have to work with, and hopefully work with well, because there is a lot of potential. But before I go off on a tangent about that and some of my great excitement and frustrations, I have my favorite question to ask Alejandra every time we have someone on, various experts. We love asking what advice you have for aspiring leaders. And of course, this entire discussion now, that serves as advice, but maybe if you had one or two things, practical things that you think an aspiring leader just needs to hear or needs to implement, or or needs to work on, what would those 1, 2, 3, however many you have, there's no limit, but what would those things be?
Well, what would be my advice? I think I would say be curious, adaptable, and courageous. I think that we have to have a dose of courage. Listen more than you speak. I think that's so important. I would say also be bold in vision, but humble in approach. And last but not least, recognize the endless power of people. I do believe that people have the power, no? Patti Smith said.
Wow, no, those are great advice. So as I said, I'm writing them down on these tiny sticky notes, but those are great points of advice, and I think those are things that people can actually tangibly apply. When you just think about being bold in vision, humble in approach, that is something I think people can work on. Curious, adaptable. Those are things that not only do they make sense to say, but I think they're also profound in their own ways when you think about what that could actually mean for people wherever they're at in their career stage. These are things that would be good to learn early, but also to learn well and apply well. But before we end, Dirk, I want to make sure we just heard some great advice for leaders. Do you have anything to add to that or to reflect on there?
Nothing to add there, because we have the question all the time. But what I do want to add is that Alejandra is from Madrid, and she said it's an amazing city. And I had the opportunity to visit with Alejandra and her husband in Madrid and see the workplace there. And it truly is an amazing energy in the workplace there. And I'm always wondering where it comes from. So we now understand where it comes from and how a place and the people and the culture. Alejandra mentioned that people in Spain like to be social, and you can feel that. You can feel that in the workplace, and that can be something that you can really harness and make something of. You don't want to suffocate that, but you want to see that strength and say, okay, how can I make the workplace even better to get more out of that and allow people to be their best. And so this is why I'm so excited with our guest here today. And Christian, as always, you get the last word here. You and Alejandra get the last word here. So thank you so much. This was just a wonderful opportunity here this morning, and obviously this afternoon for Alejandra's time zone.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly echo that and say a big thank you to Alejandra. Thank you for joining us on the show today. We certainly learned a lot. I know I certainly learned a lot. I can speak on behalf of our audience. I think that everyone learned a lot, and there's a lot to apply and a lot to think about, and hopefully share with people in their organizations, because as you're saying, so many of these points, it comes down to communication, teamwork, being adaptable, flexible. Those are things that you do in the context of working with other people in relationships and figuring out how to do that best. So truly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been such a pleasure to discuss with you. And I hope that it will be interesting for your audience. Thank you so much.
Once again, a big thank you to Alejandra for joining us on the Gemar Leadership Podcast. What an amazing conversation. I know Dirk and I had a fantastic time. We really appreciate her taking time out of her day, tuning in from Spain to really share her experience and her wisdom with us. We trust that you, our audience, also enjoyed, that you have a lot now to think about, a lot to apply. So in keeping with that, as always, we encourage you, down in the description down below, you can not only find a link to our website, you can also find our email. We would love to hear what you're thinking in response to this two-part interview series, how you're going to apply it, what you're thinking about, and any other thoughts that you have in response to any of the concepts we discussed. Similarly, if you have ideas for the future, whether it's episode suggestions, suggested interview partners, we'd love to hear that as well. Email down below, get in touch with us. If you've been enjoying the Gemar Leadership Podcast, we also encourage you two things. First of all, leave us a 5-star review or a like wherever you're listening. That helps the channel grow, helps us get this information out there, and of course, brings us into conversation with more people. So please feel free, 5-star review. It helps us out a lot. Similarly, if you've been finding this information helpful, the conversations we're having, the ideas we're thinking about, please share it with your network, whether it's a friend, family member, colleague. Share it with whoever you think might benefit from this. We'd love to get the word out here, what we're doing on this podcast and the conversations we're having. But that's all we have for today. Once again, big thank you to Alejandra, big thank you to Dirk, and of course, massive thank you to you, our listeners. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So we're wishing you all the best until we meet again here on the GMR Leadership Podcast. Until then, take care.